everyone. I'm Doni Phillips, the founder of Women on Fire. It's a membership organization that promotes inspiration, strategies, and support for women to live the lives they dream of. I have the great pleasure tonight to introduce you to and interview one of our very talented members, Doni Belau. She's the founder of the Innovative Girls Guide to Paris, the most unique women's travel company I've ever discovered in the world. Doni has this way of creating deeply personal and inspiring trips to all the coveted, major, sought after destinations in the world. And it is just a guarantee. If you are going on a trip with Doni and it's been designed by her, you're going to have a great time and you're going to flourish and grow, because I've never seen anyone who organizes travel. This is travel for women by a woman. And there's just something incredibly special of a trip. I know many of you on here have done trips with Doni, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. So I want to introduce to you the author, the founder of Girls Guide to Paris, Doni Belau. Hi, Doni.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here. And I feel like I think I put some lipstick on to match your sweater.
I love it. I should have put mine on tonight.
Yeah, you look so, I think we're in sync somehow across the airwaves.
We are always in sync. You know that.
Totally.
We have, and we always have. Doni and I have known each other for many, many years, and it's just been so incredibly enjoyable to watch her follow her deep passion, which all of you, if you haven't met her tonight, you're going to see. Doni and I decided that tonight we were going to talk about travel in 4 different phases. I've asked Doni to give an update on where things are in the world as of today, this moment, the trips that she knows for sure she's going to be taking, kind of what the status of travel is in the world as of this day. And then we're going to dive into the fear of solo travel. Doni's going to talk about what solo travel actually means, and we're going to talk about some of those fears. And I'll talk a little bit about a couple strategies to address just fear in general. And of course, we're here to answer your questions tonight. I'll be following those in the chat stream while Doni's talking. And then we are going to wrap up with travel as a means of empowerment and discovery. Because while we all know we get enormous pleasure from travel, those of you who are here tonight, I know that you love to travel, but there's some real intrinsic value in traveling, and we're going to talk about that. So let's start out. First, Doni, where in the world are you? I never know. So tell me, where are you tonight?
It's always the $60,000 question, but I'm really excited about it, but it doesn't sound exciting. I'm back home in New York, but it's the first time we've been here in over a year. Yeah.
And how did that feel to come home?
It was great. And actually even better because we sold our house. We've had this house for 22 years, and we are looking to finally realize my dream of living half the year in France and half the year somewhere warm. And I'm over the moon about this. I had a plan to move to Paris when I was 20, and it's taken me just a couple of years to, because I'm 22, it's only just taken a couple of years to make that happen, otherwise known as 38. So
I like your math.
I can create my own reality.
Talk to us. Since COVID hit, you tell us what happened. COVID struck, and then what?
Yeah, I always tell people, COVID hit. I was leading a trip to Bali. We were in Bali with like 10 women, and that's when the US State Department ordered everyone home. They said, come home or prepare to stay where you are indefinitely. So deep breath, everybody got home fine. I actually thought about staying because I love Bali, and Indonesia was at that moment not experiencing hardly any COVID, and they were forcing me to fly back to New York, which was the epicenter. So it seemed weird, but I did it because my daughter and my son and my husband and everyone wanted me to come home. And I knew that my business of travel was just going to be washed out for some time. Not we were hoping 3 months. Of course, it was a year. But so we rented out the house, and we've been on the road ever since COVID. So we've been traveling when everyone else was locked up, which is crazy.
Wow.
We've been, and it sounds really crazy and almost irresponsible until you think about New York was the least safe place at that moment in the world to be. So we went to Rhode Island for a couple of months, stayed at a friend's house.
Right.
The perfect isolation vehicle is a sailboat, by the way. So we were isolating on the water, and that was really actually fantastic. I went up to Maine, and then we went to California, see my family, and then we went to Mexico to excuse me, to Oaxaca for 2 months. Then we went to Honduras for a month and a half on the islands, and then we went to New Orleans, and now we're back here. So always renting Airbnbs, obviously always taking COVID tests each time, you're going anywhere, and never eating inside, keeping masks on and so forth. So actually somehow we made it through
Right.
safely.
Well, the other thing that I want to point out, and we've all, I mean, I've been working from home for 25 years, but I know a lot of people learn to work from home, and you and Robert really work from home, and so once again, there's this whole new really culture of people who can work remotely, and you were in that group of people, so you were working the whole time, because I know I heard from you.
That was actually such a blessing to be able to work from home. In those early days, that was really a concern. I think we all kind of got used to it a little
Right.
bit, but instead of just, we obviously postponed all those trips that were meant to go that spring, and then that fall, and then that, so, on and on. But we ended up revamping the website. I ended up doubling down and creating all these new partnerships. So now we have more, because I figured the moment would come, which seems to be almost about now, when the world was starting to reopen, and I knew that everybody would be desperate to travel. This is what I'm hearing. I actually had one woman call me and said, "What's your first trip on board? I don't care where. I just got to go anywhere."
Yep, I've heard that too, about just even getting out from here. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Just let me go anywhere. I don't care where it is.
Exactly.
Uh,
Well, where is right now? So as of today, April 13th, 2021, just give us the latest update on where are you going? Where can we go and safely? And then I want to talk a little bit about the vaccine passport and the whole vaccination issue in order to travel. And then if anyone has questions in the chat stream, please go ahead and I'll grab them while Donnie's kind of sharing. Where can we go safely, Donnie?
Well, it's amazing, but more than 50 countries are open right now to travel. Now, I wrote an article about this, and you can find it on our website, which is girlsguidetoparis.com, and under blogs, which is under more. I basically took, this was a month ago, I looked at the COVID numbers per country, and in terms of, per 100,000, the numbers of people who've gotten sick, and sadly those who passed away, compared them to what we have in these states. As you know, we have one of the worst situations here. There actually are a lot of places to go, and what we're all kind of waiting for, since I have so many trips to France, and even though we're Girls Guide to Paris, it's Paris and beyond, because we have 60 trips all over the world, from Mongolia to South Africa to Estonia, everywhere. But we're all waiting patiently and hoping and praying for Western Europe. Our instinct when we're afraid and worried is to go to places that we know are more familiar with. But, this fall, I have a trip to Morocco. Morocco is actually a lot safer than a lot of other places than New York. Mongolia, which I have a trip to going this summer, is open May 1st, so right around the corner, to anybody who's been vaccinated. We're actually going in June to Greece, have a full trip. I think it might have a space or two, but mostly full trip. And we're starting in Athens, and then we're going down south to a really not very well known area. And they're opening May 15th. Again, fingers crossed, for anybody who's had 2 vaccines, or 1 if you had Johnson & Johnson, or who tests negative, or who has antibodies. So they're opening it up beyond just the vaccinated. So every country is going to be different. France, we don't know. I've been told by people in the know, in tourism there, they feel they're still they're still shooting for the summer, but it's a country by country, moment by moment thing. And so, I spend a lot of time online, like the rest of us do, trying to
Right.
figure this out.
Right.
But it all is going to open. And what I've done with Girls Guide to Paris is to say, and I think a lot of people in travel have done this, almost everybody who wants to stay in business, is offer risk-free booking, meaning if you book something and we have to postpone it, you can't go on those new dates, you get your money back, or you can use it towards another trip, because there's just no way for you or me to actually guess the exact date that Austria is going to be open. I don't know right this
Right,
moment.
right. Well, one, I really appreciate you doing that, because I think it's also very hopeful, to be able to sign up for a trip. And I've gone on to Girls Guide to Paris .com just as a travel log. Like, Donnie, your trips are just so beautiful and inspiring, and it just is fun to read through them and imagine and dream. If not this year, next year, or some other time in the future. So it's really fun. It's like a catalog to peruse. Darla,
Yeah.
I'm going to add Darlene Wade asked a good question. She said she's heard that it's going to be more expensive to travel airline hotels because they will increase the prices to make up for the losses. Have you heard that at all? Or are you experiencing that as you're booking your trips?
Like everything, yes and no.
Yeah.
So I deal a lot with the French. Some of them are thinking that way. Well, of course, we negotiate everybody down. On the other hand, there's other people who are just so thrilled to get the business that they're giving you great prices. So it totally depends on the place and the situation. There is no across the board thing on this. The only thing that I would suggest to anyone who wants to travel anywhere is it is a good idea to get your bookings in now. Like, for example, we've got 3 trips going to France for Christmas markets, because that's a really popular tour that we do, and it's a lot of people's bucket lists. And so if it's a thing that's popular like that and it's in advance, you've got people who are backing up. Think about the weddings that were canceled, or all those trips that were canceled. So you've got 2 or 3 times the amount of people trying to get those hotels for that time. And make sure you get trip insurance, make sure you have the ability to get out of it, all those things. But it's good to secure your space as soon as you can, because like we have rented our apartment in Paris. May's already rented for 22. That's crazy.
Wow.
you know but that's what you're seeing all around for really popular things. That's not true across the board. Nothing is.
Is there anything more you want to just say about the whole vaccine situation? And when you, for instance, and when you take your trips, are you going to have to isolate once you arrive, let's say in Greece?
Yeah, no. I mean, there's no way you can do a trip like that. So we're not going anywhere where you have to isolate right away. In general, we have some 120 people booked this year and 70 already for next year. So almost everybody, with a couple of exceptions, is basically using it as like, I've got my vaccines and now I'm going to book a trip. So most everybody will be vaccinated. Most countries are requiring vaccination, but it's not, like I said, in the case of Greece, they're saying there's these 2 other options. So there's one lady, and actually maybe 2, that I've talked to out of these hundreds of people. So, it's obviously a small minority, at least the people that are working with me, that are saying, I don't think I'm going to get a vaccine, or I haven't decided yet. What I have told one lady is, if France will let you in and you're on this trip and the other people on the trip agree, then you just have to come showing a within 72 hours certificate showing that you don't have COVID. Plus, if you figure all the rest of the people are vaccinated and the driver's vaccinated, I'm vaccinated, or whoever is leading the trip is vaccinated. But in my mind, that, you're protected against that if that person happens to be carrying it, even though they tested negative. So that's a long way of explaining it, but that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, well, it's just good to know. We know it's all in flux. That's for sure. So, Donnie, let's talk about, because one of the things that actually surprised me, this was a wonderful conversation you and I had one day, and you were talking about the fears that women have to travel. I was really surprised. So I was talking with a group of women who are very, like, they're travelers, they're sophisticated, and they too had a lot of fears. So I was like, this is a real thing. Yeah. Obviously, you are such an expert and pro at this, but So we decided that we'd have this conversation so we could talk about the fears that you see, because you talk to all these women who do sign up for these trips. So one, so the topic, the title tonight is the five fears that women have about solo travel. So first off, Doni, would you describe what solo travel means?
According to the expert on solo travel, she has like 100,000, followers and stuff. She said, solo travel is obviously when I go by myself to France, Egypt, who knows where, and I figure it all out, and I'm, fly by myself and figure it all out when I'm there. And solo travel is also when I go and join a group of people that are not my friends. It depends on your situation. If you haven't been out of the house, I'm gonna give you a red star or a gold star for doing that as well. So, but solo travel technically is apparently doing it on your own or in a group, where you're going and meeting that up with that group by yourself.
Fantastic. So Women on Fire, if you have questions, if you have a fear about traveling, and we're going to dive into the ones that are most common that Doni sees, but please share in the chat stream, and then we are going to get started. So Doni, the first fear of the five that we came up with and discussed.
The big fears. I think the first fear that everyone talks about with traveling, women's travel, is safety. That's the big one. Am I going to be safe? Walking down the street at night. Should I walk home alone? Can I walk home alone? Is it safe? People ask me a lot. Particularly, we have 4 trips to Mexico. Is Mexico safe? Should I go as a single woman to Istanbul? All these kind of things are concerns. Obviously, if you're in a group like mine, it's really not as much of a concern. We don't go to war zones, super dangerous places, because most people don't want to go there. We're picking safe places, but everybody's idea of safety is different. So it's I think a really good thing to talk about it. Then you have to do some research. You really do, and I really believe in using proper statistics. There's a great website called Numbeo, Numbeo. You can compare your town to another town that you're going to. This one lady, who I told you about, Debbie, who was coming on a photography tour to Paris, never been to Paris, couldn't wait, just dying to go. She's in her late 60s, maybe early 70s, not sure. And she said, I really want to go, but my husband's worried, And I said, well, what's he worried about? Well, he's worried about my safety. This is pre-COVID, obviously, because that COVID brought in a whole new group of things, which we've already kind of discussed. But she said, I said, well, what is he worried about? Is he worried about terrorism? Is he worried about just theft or danger just in your hotel, or the Yellow Jackets? I don't know if you guys remember the Yellow Jackets. There's always something to be afraid of, So they were protesting, and there was a couple of skirmishes and some windows broken. I think one person died. This was that year. You have a better chance of being hit by lightning, and there was all these, dying in your bathtub and all these things, but because terrorism in the news, it was scaring us. And, the news really, really, really changes how you're looking at everything. And it's, you have to be careful what you ingest. So, anyway, I found this guy in Germany who was a scientist, and he had done all kinds of research because he was living in Germany, was sick of his friends from the US saying, is it safe where you are? It doesn't seem safe. Comparing what we consider to be some of the safest places in America to European cities, such as France, such as Paris, such as, I think he was in I don't know where he was in Germany, but anyway, he compared those two, and he's basically found out it's 3 times less safe to live in the US than anywhere in Europe. Oh, no. Because of, we have so many shootings.
Right. Well, and thank you. And that's just really good to have a website like that can make some comparisons for us. So Fernie asked a good question, and you and I have chatted about this before too, Doni, is pickpocketing. She's wondering what in traveling, what kind of a problem, is it a concern? Is pickpocketing a concern?
If you have just the most basic sense of keeping a hold of your purse and so forth, I really do like to do a shoulder purse, so that I'm not, or something open is not smart. So, but if a shoulder purse, you're hanging onto it all the time.
Right. I always turn mine, I always do a crossbody and then I turn the flap inside to my body. I do that anyway. I do that normally.
And because I live in New York, so I snatched purses back from guys, before in this, in the 80s when New York was a little less safe. One person did get some photography equipment stolen on a trip, and it was, and look, this can happen anywhere. And so, this is why you have insurance. And she did. One in, hundreds and hundreds. It'll happen every once in a while. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do to be more careful.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's wonderful. Okay. So what's the second fear?
Oh, and this was maybe a lot more fun to talk about than the first one, or what we talked about before, food. And believe it or not, that comes up with the people I speak to much more often than safety. We all seem to have something we're not eating at one moment in time. So there's always a woman who doesn't eat fish and one who can only eat fish, gluten-free and not, and I don't eat any meat, and all those things. I'm a picky eater. And if you're going to Japan and staying in a ryokan, I mean, basically 99% of the time we can work around that, and you can work around that if you're traveling solo. You absolutely can. Gluten-free people have to be militant because that's going to really affect them. Now, there's gluten-free everywhere. It's a big thing in Italy. They have gluten-free pizzas. Not 99% of the time, it's not a worry, and it should not stop you from going places. I hate to imagine that would stop someone,
Well, and Doni, one of my favorite stories is on the rare occasion, like when you were in Japan and the menu was in Japanese. Tell everybody what you did for an adventure.
Yeah. Well, that's that third fear, which is, what if I don't speak the language? So, we really couldn't go hardly anywhere if we wanted to only go to places that spoke the language. One time in Tokyo, right around the corner from the Imperial Hotel, which is, right central Tokyo, my husband and I went into a lovely looking place for lunch, and Japanese only menu, no pictures, just words, the beautiful, those beautiful characters, but I have no idea what they mean. So we just kind of laughed and just picked a couple of things on the menu. And of course, if you're going in a group and you have an interpreter, that's never a problem. But these are the things that stop people, and they actually think about and worry about. But, worst comes to worst, that's what we did. We picked a couple things, and we have no idea what we ate, but it was good. And we'll never forget that. It was really fun.
It's happened to me. I was in Chile, and I think I was kind of not feeling well, and I saw what I thought was Jello on the menu. So I ordered it. And even when I ordered it, I pointed and I'm like, Jello? And the guy kind of looked at me sort of funny, and I said, like, a bowl of Jello. And he's like, and he came back with a bowl of jelly.
Just what you want when you're feeling a little sick. But it's a big bowl of jam.
Yeah, right, a bowl of jam. And I'm here to tell the story. I want to just insert a question here because this is just so fun. And Doni, Holly is saying, hi, Doni. How wonderful, opening up the world for us. And Holly, who's been to Japan 35 times. Oh, Holly says, what is the country you're longing to go to and haven't been yet?
There's so many on my list. I actually keep a list of, there's about 37 countries left that I want to go to. And then there's a bunch more. I'm not one of those people that wants to cross off every single country. But one of the places that was not originally on my list and is now on my list I think the place that comes to mind first, and we could talk about this, I'm sure all of us could talk about this for the next 6 hours, Bhutan. There's so many places that are not on the top of people's lists that you don't even know about.
Right.
That once you learn about, it's like, oh my God, I'm just done. So anyway, we're doing a trip to Bhutan.
Okay, so we have done safety, food, language. What else, Ms. Doni? We got 2 more.
That just to follow up on language, if you're going solo, there, now I actually talked to a guy in Honduras where we were a couple of months ago and asked him what this flag meant. And he just talked into his Google Translate thing and it came right back up and he said, it's this. So cool. Now, the other one, the fourth fear I call, what if? and this is what stops us, as you guys all well know, who are, devotees of Debbie, you know that you're not stopping yourselves from what ifs. But even the coolest of the cool people in this group, the little what ifs come up, especially after this year. So what if I join a group tour and everybody's older than me, or everybody's younger than me, or I'm the fattest? I hear that all the time, and people ask it in all these sort of careful ways. One woman said, I don't want any, catty women, and that, I don't either. I mean, I totally understand that. So people want to connect and people want to bond. Now, the thing that most people are afraid of if they're going solo, and this is what concerned me, and I didn't do anything solo till I was in my 40s, was dining alone at night. Somehow we're all fine with it morning and the afternoon, but at night, do we feel like a loser, or do we look pathetic? Are people looking at us? Is it weird? Am I going to be lonely? Like all those questions. I know when I did it the first time, I did a 3-week trip in my 40s, and I had done a lot of meditation and yoga and, kind of Buddhist practices, so it wasn't just out of the gate, I had some things to rely on. And I would even I started first going with the book, and then eventually I got to the point where I wouldn't even go with the book, and I would just really observe. And it was so much fun to dine alone. And I would come back, and especially if there was things to look at, that I'd come back home to the hotel. It's like, oh, I've had such a good time with myself, And it was the best feeling. Like, wonderful. You don't need anyone else to have fun.
Wow, that's so that's so fantastic. We'll sneak in another question here. Alessandra wants to know, what's your secret to packing to keep a travel bag light and still feel fabulous? And I have heard you talk about this, Doni. It's so helpful.
I am the worst person in the world to ask that question to, because I suck at packing. I will tell you that. I have written an article on how not to do what I do. That's what the top 10 things not to do. Do not do anything I do when it comes to packing. I've done everything wrong over the years. I have gotten a little bit better, but there's a woman called the Travel Fashion Girl. The Travel Fashion Girl does video after video on this topic. She's gone 3 months with a carry-on, and she looks good. She's not, that's the whole idea. But she has, the type of clothes. She did teach me. I was at a women's travel festival, and she taught me you have to roll your stuff in cubes. The packing cubes absolutely work. And she sells all those. So I'm going to just refer that question right to the Travel Fashion Girl, because my life's goal is to not look like the bag lady, in the airport, but it's touch and go.
So funny. Well, let's put in that great question, Julia. She's like, what if is keeping her valuables safe while they're on the beach and they go in the water.
Yeah, I mean, that's a real concern. That's maybe one other thing. I had my shoes stolen once. But the ideal thing is to have, first of all, don't bring much valuable to the beach other than your book, your spray, and the problem is we all want to bring our phone because we all want to take pictures and maybe even read on iPad or whatever. Ideally you have somebody watch your stuff. That's the smartest thing to do. The last fear, which is getting lost.
How many of you have that fear of getting lost, either where you are or in the airport? But go for it, Doni.
Yeah. So this is a sad story. And this is why I think it's this woman that made me want to do these talks. And we're doing even a bigger one with a huge group of women after this in May. Probably so many people on this call are really great travelers, but you probably know someone that I'm going to describe right now. And this is a lady who's older. She was going to go with a friend on a trip to the Aveyron, which is a place in France that's not very well known and beautiful. And she was all excited about this trip. And then her friend couldn't go. And then she said, well, I don't know. I just always get lost in airports. And another woman who was a life coach told me that too. I get lost in airports. Airports freak me out. And can I make the train? How do I buy the train ticket? Like something about trains and airplanes freak a lot of people out. And I think it's just because there's a hard and fast deadline. you have got to make that plane by a certain time. And everybody is anxious at the airport. It's like, and especially now with COVID and the masks and the tests and the vaccines, it's just endless. So this poor lady, even though I said, there's a lady in New York who also can go with you to the airport. And once you get off the plane, we're going to meet you, and you're never going to be alone really at all. She just couldn't do it. And for me, I was just thinking about what is it? And the basically, if you go into that worst case scenario, what's the worst case scenario? Well, everything has happened to me in the worst case scenario, other than, thank God, knock on wood, I've not crashed, which of course is a different fear, and there are meds for that, and that's a whole thing and very complicated and so forth. So I'm not a shrink, and I don't want to go there, but worst case scenario is you miss the flight. So there's other flights. It's not the end of the world. It's happened to me. It's happened to me more than once, I'm embarrassed to say. Or you might miss the train. I've done that too. They might lose your bags. That happens. Usually they find them. Actually, almost all the time they find them. But I got lost one night, and I was fumbling around in the Medina. It was late. I had just had my phone stolen, and in the restaurant from, so that was an actual scary experience. And it wasn't super scary, but it's the fear that, what if fear again, and all that was come bubbling in my head. And there was an odd looking guy. I thought he was following me, but he probably really wasn't following me. And eventually, it's my first night. I eventually found the Riyadh, and I got back and everything was fine. Right. So look, getting lost, it can happen. Right. Most of the time when you have your phone, you can always get back.
Like what Michelle Whitaker, I really love that. She's like, I like to get lost. Is that strange? I think it's actually wonderful. And I see other people love to wander the streets. And so this possibly is a group that that doesn't worry about that too much. But
no.
So Holly, some of the craziest things that happened to me while traveling are some of the greatest stories in my life. And I think that's
exactly. Really- well, you guys could teach this class, really.
Doni, I knew it was going to go fast, and we've got about 9 minutes here. So what I want to do is just figure out one of the things I want to ask in the chat stream. Is there anybody that has a dream location where you want to go to, but something other than finances keeps you from going?
It's just wonderful to find a way to turn fear, even if you just have only a little tiny bit, because I feel like I don't have very much anymore, but there's always going to be something that tests you, but turn fear into fun. And, I'm going to put it back out at you guys, because I think that you guys all have some great answers for that, and that we'll use in our next call.
This is powerful. And Michelle raises a good point, getting sick in India, Kay Rafels, all those steps in Santorini. So these are just exactly what we're talking about. What's a dream, but it prevents you from doing that. And I think what Doni's pointing out is there's kind of always a way. As we all know here, because we talk about this, 90% of everything is having the awareness of what's holding you back. And then you take the 10% and figure out, is there a way around that?
We went to Thailand, Vietnam, Thailand, and Cambodia. My husband got really sick because, of course, he drank something, that on the street. And, there's obviously that could have been avoided. But, middle of the night, asked the hotel, went out, got some meds for him. He lost a day. He's in his, hotel room. It sucks to get sick when you're on vacation, but it definitely happens. I mean, there's just no way to avoid that, because we get sick at home. It's just, that can absolutely happen. So it's less, the more remote, the less fun it is. Well, that's what's so great too, is in a lot of these countries, they'll come to your house. When we're in Mexico, they call, they'll come, the vet came to the house. So, there's a lot of countries. I always say in France, it's the best place to get sick, because they have the best healthcare in the world, and they'll come to your house.
That's so great. Okay. Well, one of the things that I did promise, and Doni and I talked about this, is please know when we are faced with fear, it's, number one, just what I said, be aware of what it is, what you're exactly afraid of or fearful. And then you can find a solution to that. The other thing too, and this is for every day, but I actually use this when I'm traveling or when I'm in a car in a place that feels kind of strange. Sometimes I get a little tiny bit anxious, and, our breath can control so much. And, the easiest way to work through a fear with a breath is to, breathe in really deeply and then double the number of breaths letting it out. So sometimes when I'm driving, I'll just breathe in 4 and I'll breathe out slowly to a count of 8. And you would be really surprised in that short time. I've done it on planes. I've done it all kinds of times. And, just this notion of talking about whatever it is you're afraid of or that you're concerned about. It's called the paradoxical theory of change. Actually talking about it with somebody that receives it, just talking about it often allows the grip of a fear to be released. So you know how we are here. We always talk about whatever it is that's bugging us so that we can let it go, so that we can have fun.
I do the 4-point breath sometimes, where you breathe in, you hold for 4, you breathe out for 4, you hold for 4, which you can't be in a panic attack or freaking out when you're doing that breathing. It's not, right, it's like physically impossible.
Exactly. And you know what? A pilot once told me, and this was so incredibly helpful. He said, turbulence is always a matter of comfort, not safety. And so when there's a lot of great turbulence, I go, this is just a matter of comfort, not safety. Yeah. And that helps. So just knowing that,
Yeah.
I hope that's true.
Well, a pilot told you. So one little thing that I think people might encounter, and I talked to a woman today, which is really cool lady, is going to come on one of our trips. When she started getting ready and driving to the airport, she started getting really panicky and anxiety ridden. And she said, what is going on with me? What is going on? And it's almost like we've all collectively been through this real trauma with COVID. And, people's, I have family members die. I'm sure everybody has known somebody. And we've been fed to so much fear that was warranted, but also it was scary to hear it. It was it's something that I think we have to recover from. And I said, how did you get through that anxiety? And she said, I just said to myself, if you're not comfortable there, you can always come back, kind of just talk to herself and not let the fear go wild. Because when I have something in my mind telling me something really negative, sometimes I'll say, just shut up, Phyllis. Like I'll call that voice Phyllis, the fear voice. They shut up, Phyllis. I'm not listening to you. This is going to be fine. And she said, basically, I just kept moving forward. Right. And that's really what courage is, isn't it? Is just keep moving forward, even if you are afraid, and silence that voice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to say there's so many great suggestions here. I'm going to use that one, Darlene, about just being like a wave and going limp. That's a good one. So really, really helpful. Doni, in the 1 minute that we have left, I shared with you one of my top 10 favorite quotes is, if you don't travel, it's like reading only one page of a book. And so I love that quote so much. That's impacted my life so much. I want to encourage everybody to go to girlsguideToParis.com and just enjoy every minute, every word on her site. But anything you'd like to close with, Doni?
Well, obviously we want to invite anyone who's not coming with us to the trip that Debbie and I are doing to France. So, I would just certainly love to talk to any one of you guys. So if you have any questions or places you want to go, you just want advice, shoot me up. It's Doni at Girls Guide to Paris. Ping me and let's chat.
Thank you so much. I can't wait for all the trips that I'm going on with you that are on the horizon. So super, super excited.